stay looking as young as possible for as long as possible. And is there anything wrong with that?
And nowhere is clinging onto youth better illustrated than with the male obsession of holding onto your hair.
Hair loss occurs from your mid-20s to your mid-50s. After that, you're not going to lose much more hair, but there is a progressive loss of hair during that time.
Some make the most of the freedom, but others will try anything from pills and potions to more radical surgery to fight follicular fallout.
I had treatment for it myself, and I'm quite proud to say it's worked very well.
You're not doing this surgery for other people. You're doing it for yourself. And if it makes you feel good, makes you feel more confident, then do it.
With advances in technology, there are plenty of success stories for men fighting hair loss. But, like all surgery, there is still a chance things can go horribly wrong.
It's one thing to experience hair loss, and it's another thing altogether to have an unnatural head of hair.
In the early 90s, David Anderson was a young man without a care in the world. His crown and glory? A fine head of hair.
Throughout my teens and in my early 20s, my hair was a feature of mine. I used to have really incredible hair. It was very, very thick, and it was a thing I was always complimented on.
But in August 1994, David became aware of a worrying change.
I first noticed my hair loss when I was 21. I actually burnt my head when I was on holiday. So to start to see what effectively was my crown and glory disappear. My hair loss was rapid. I mean, I was looking in the shower, looking at my hands, seeing how much hair there was. People were commenting on my hair loss, and that made me even more paranoid about things, wanting to do something. I just didn't want to be that guy who went on to lose his hair.
But help seemed at hand when David went to London to consult a hair transplant surgeon.
I was sold the dream of having, after a number of surgeries, a full head of hair.
Back in the 90s, though, procedures weren't as advanced as they were now.
There was really only one way of doing it, which is to take a strip of hair away and then stitch it back up again, which is going to leave a scar.
But for David, any scarring was a price worth paying.
The surgery that I had was into the frontal area here, just behind my hairline, and I was continuing to lose more hair, so I was committed at that stage, and I was still losing hair very, very rapidly, so I never addressed the issue of future hair loss.
We have surgeons who work with us, and they would never do a hair transplant on anybody really below the age of 30.
I should never have been given those procedures at that particular time, but that was back in the day, and they weren't thinking about onward progression of hair loss. I went back the next year and had another surgery again, which then took another scar from the back of my head.
Every time you're taking grafts away from one place to put in another place, you've got fewer to work with. Well, there's only so many times you can go back to the well.
But although the hair was falling out at a rate of knots, the surgeons were agreeing to perform further grafts on David, leaving his scalp looking like a World War I battlefield. Even when David's remaining hair grew back, the results were disappointing.
I think it's one thing to experience hair loss, and it's another thing altogether to have an unnatural head of hair, where people are just looking at your hairline. So in my day-to-day work, people would glance up at my hairline and give me a strange look. And that just used to kill me.
Sometimes people are a bit isolated. They find it very difficult to get the right psychological help with that. And as a result, they end up going down the route of increasingly obscure and idiosyncratic and odd surgical procedures that end up damaging them in the long run.
This is something that I lived with on my own, and I couldn't talk about things because I was embarrassed about what I'd done.
After paying for so many procedures, David was also now in debt, and his marriage was under pressure.
When I look back with hindsight, I realised that I must have been quite difficult to live with for somebody who didn't want to go out, who didn't want to embrace new friends and new situations. I just wanted to sort of recluse myself indoors and not have a social life. It affected my marriage broke down, I went through a divorce, and this was at the time when I was at my lowest. I can't blame my ex-wife. I was obsessed, and I just watched the rest of my hair fall out until all I had left was this original hair transplants that were done in the 90s.
With no hair, no money, and now no wife, David had nothing to lose. So, after another bank loan, he went to Canada for a far more advanced surgery unavailable in the UK.
I flew to Vancouver in 2006 and had a repair surgery. It was a huge commitment for me to put my trust into somebody else, again, within this industry, to have surgery after having 3 poor procedures.
For David, the surgeon succeeded in grafting thousands of follicles without the damage evident in his previous work.
I felt so much better. My whole personality changed. I became social again. I went travelling on my own, backpacking around Europe for a few months. I wanted to be out there again. I wanted to make up for the time that I'd wasted in my 20s.
In the last 13 years, David has had 3 more successful procedures and is so happy with his results that he works for a leading hair transplant clinic, using his own experiences to advise patients.
I'm happily married again. I'm a different person to what I was back in the 90s when everything went horribly wrong.